A federal judge rules California's assault weapons ban unconstitutional. Plus, Yehuda Remer of the Pew Pew Jew on his community's overwhelming demand for guns in the wake of the attacks on Israel. That and more on this episode of the Weekly Reload podcast.
No, the devil's got no hold on me.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Weekly Reload podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Gutowski. I'm also a CNN contributor and the founder of thereload.com, where you can head over and sign up for our free newsletter today if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with guns in America. We send you one email a week on Fridays that lets you know everything important that's been going on. Of course, if you want to dive deeper, you can also buy a membership, which is also how we fund the Reload. And that'll give you another newsletter on Sundays, as well as access to hundreds of pieces of exclusive content that you won't get anywhere else, and the opportunity to appear on this show, which you will also get a day early. So there's a lot of benefits to membership. This week on the show, we are talking about the recent terror attacks in Israel and the reaction to them here in the United States, especially inside of the Jewish community here. And so I have author and Jewish gun rights advocate Yehuda Remer on the show today. Welcome to the show, Yehuda.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Many people might know you, obviously, as you can tell from the sweatshirt from everyone watching on YouTube, as the Pew Pew Jew, right?
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, building a brand forever.
Yes, and so this is not new for you. You've been at this for a while. You've been a gun rights advocate for years now, and you've been active in the gun rights movement. You go to a lot of the conferences. We've known each other for quite a while. But if you want to tell people just a little bit more about your background before we get going here.
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles, bought my first gun there. A few years later, my wife and I picked up, moved to Texas, and I entered the industry by writing my first book right there. It's a children's book on firearm safety, covers all aspects of gun safety. And then from there, in the last nearly 7 years, I've written 8 books, and I'm about to release my 9th book. I launched a brand called the Pew Pew Jew in late 2018 or early 2019, with just super fun, self-deprecating, pro-2A, pro-Jewish apparel. Absolutely.
And you're also a firearms safety instructor as well?
Yes.
And so this past I think we're recording on Thursday here. I think it's been 12 days or so since this. It's hard to even describe what this was, right? I mean, this is sort of like your old-time pogrom, right? It's like the worst attack on Jewish people since
the Holocaust. Yeah.
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 And so
it's
what?
Brutal.
It absolutely is. And we've, I'm sure everyone who's listening has seen pictures and videos coming out of this attack, which focused on slaughtering civilians, women and children, and people who were unarmed, all sorts of horrible, horrible things. And then, in addition to that, we've seen throughout the world, but also here in the United States, a number of protests supporting Hamas and these actions, not just sort of tacitly, but openly. They're directly saying that this was a good thing to have happened. So, we've got a story coming out on this, the reaction to this inside the American Jewish community. But you're in the community, you're seeing it firsthand. What have you seen over these last almost 2 weeks?
So it's interesting. It went from absolute heartbreak, people mourning the loss of civilian life in Israel. It was a Jewish holiday when it happened. And specifically, it wasn't just like a regular Sabbath. I mean, it was a holiday, so everyone gets together with family and friends more than just your normal Sabbath. So it went from heartbreak and mourning to an uptick that I've never seen in the years that I've been doing this, with Jews from all walks of life being interested in firearms, and not just an introduction to them, but hey, we think it's time to buy one. We think it's time to train. I mean, we're talking about 1,000% increase in what I normally see from anytime there's a terrorist attack. And I think it really comes down to not necessarily what happened in Israel, but the aftermath of all of the pro-Hamas rallies that we've been seeing across the country. I mean, this is our own home soil here in America, and you see, throughout the different cities, hundreds of thousands of individuals cheering on what Hamas did. And that, I think, is scaring the living hell out of people.
Yeah, because, I mean, these rallies, like, obviously there's a lot of controversy around Israel and Palestine and has been for a long time. But, it's not just that people are there saying free Palestine or some of the more moderate positions, or they're really celebrating these attacks in a lot of cases. They're using the paraglider iconography in some of these protests. They're saying, from the river to the sea, which is essentially a call to completely destroy Israel. These aren't subtle things at it. Not that everybody has done that at every one of these protests, but it's been a very common feature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they're really calling for the complete eradication. Not just of. I mean, keep in mind, not just of Israel, right? We're talking about Jews and Western culture. So, I don't think anyone is safe, Jew or non-Jew alike. And seeing, them taking over, was it the Capitol building yesterday? There was a huge rally there to, the streets of Dallas, the streets of, every state, just having these massive protests calling for the death of Israel, the death of Jews, the death of, Western culture. It should be a massive wake-up call for everybody.
And is, obviously the attack in Israel is where people were actually killed by, I think, just the numbers up to 1,400 now. Obviously there's Israel's the Jewish homeland, right? There's a special connection between a lot of Jewish people. From my understanding, I'm not Jewish, of course, but my understanding is that there's a special connection. It's meant to be this safe place for Jewish people, especially in the wake of the Holocaust. And so, that attack, from my understanding, from talking to a number of Jewish Americans, had a particular psychological effect in that sense that, there was always sort of conflict there, of course, and rockets get fired into Israel a lot, and it's not completely safe, but nothing like this has ever happened before.
Right. I mean, we've definitely had the Yom Kippur War and the 6-Day War in 1967, but nothing. Those were all. And here's the thing, right? And I think most Jews will agree with this: is if it was a attack on military installations, although we would be cheering for Israel to win, it's somewhat understandable. It's a military installation. It's a military operation. This was not that. This was straight up murder on civilians. I mean, this was a 100% terrorist attack, beheading babies, raping women, kidnapping, and then straight out murder. So, it's we haven't seen anything like this since the Holocaust. So, it's definitely different than 67 and 73 because those were wars on military installations. It wasn't just indiscriminately killing civilians. So there is a difference, but look, I have a cousin on the front lines right now. I've been helping my brother-in-law who lives there get equipment for his community, vests and helmets and stuff like that, so they can do guard duty. I mean, it's something I've never seen before, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah. At the same time, of course, this is something that happened an ocean away from America.
Right.
We don't have something like Hamas on our border in the same sense that Israel does. And so, what is it that you think has driven American Jews? Is it just the shocking nature of the attack, or is it something more that's driving people here to want to become armed?
I think it's more, like I said, seeing those protests and rallies across the country that are in favor of what Hamas did. I mean, when you have a group of 15 to 25,000 people marching the streets, cheering that Hamas decapitated a bunch of babies, I mean, if you don't think that they would do it to people here, you're crazy. So I think there's a lot of people from Jews from every city, every state that are terrified that it could happen here. And let's be honest, the Democratic Party has not been the friendliest group of politicians to Jews in America. You have the whole squad who are cheering on what Hamas did, and I mean it's scary. It's definitely waking people up.
And then presumably there's the sort of alt-right contingent. There's a similar effect there with anti-Semitism being a driver. And then in addition to these protests, there have been a lot of threats and even a few attacks on synagogues and against the Jewish community since then as well, right?
I mean, yeah, but the attacks on Jewish communities and synagogues and college campuses, those have been going on for years, and it's one of the reasons why I do what I do is because a lot of Jews will just stand there and a professor will say something anti-Semitic, and then all they do is get up there and call for his firing. So okay, good. So the college will fire that professor, but then you have 100 other professors in the waiting in the wings to do the exact same thing that the first professor did. So I'm one of these people that anti-Semitism is not going anywhere. It's been around for 3,000 years. I get it. You're never going to get rid of it. But what you could do is curb it and slow it down. And the only way to do that is by making them more afraid of us than we are of them. And in order to do that, you got to defend yourself. You got to, carry a gun. If you don't have a gun, get a knife. You don't have a knife, baseball bat. No baseball bat, learn some sort of martial arts, right? They need to think twice about attacking Jews, about whether we'd be willing to fight back. Then we are afraid of them.
Yeah, and I guess that's one point to discuss here as well, because obviously anti-Semitism has been around for a very long time, and it has been an issue in the United States as well for a very long time. And we've seen incidents of anti-Semitic violence before. Even in recent history, such as the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, that attack, and you could point to many other ones.
Right.
At the same time, you're seeing a totally different response to this, in intensity at least, from the Jewish community, right?
Yeah, because the attacks that we've seen, like you said, Tree of Life, Poway in San Diego, and other attacks, those seem to have been more lone wolf attacks, right? Some one crazy nut job. It's not anyone affiliated with any kind of organization. But what we're seeing now, again, is whether these people on the streets of, Dallas or other states having these rallies, Washington, D.C., whether they are actually affiliated with Hamas really doesn't come into play. When you get 25,000 people per state getting up there and calling for, Hamas to destroy Israel and to destroy Jews and Western civilization, I mean that's a whole different level, and it's something that you can't take lightly.
So it sounds like there's perhaps a difference in the degree of the particular attack here, combined with the degree of the response. Because that is another thing that we've seen before, right? In a lot of these sort of more fringe pro-Palestinian groups on campus, there have been extremist, violent rhetoric from them for a very long time. But I guess never in the wake of something like this. And And I guess you're saying that the scale of how many people are willing to join in with those calls is what's the difference here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, right? Like on college campuses, you might get 100 people calling for pro-Palestinian rights, but in your eyes, you're like, well, that's happening in the university and the university of whatever state. I live in this state here, so it stinks. They need to get rid of all these people. Okay, good. It doesn't affect you. Here, we're seeing people with the possibility of being affected by these groups across the country. So it definitely is a different. When you think it can happen to you is when your level of security, your heightened level of security goes up. When you don't think it can happen to you, or you don't have any skin in the game necessarily, you don't take it seriously. But we're seeing people take it a lot more seriously because it can happen anywhere at any time by anyone at this point.
Yeah, that's the feeling inside of the community right now.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the kinds of people you've been hearing from that maybe you didn't expect to hear from in the wake of this?
Oh, I've been hearing from everybody, from people who have been anti-gun, who the people used to call me a gun nut and that I'm crazy, that it'll never happen in America. I've been hearing from those people for training and advice on how to get guns, to more seasoned gun owners saying, hey, we have like a full-size Glock 17, but now we want to get something a little more concealable because we feel the need to carry it in public. So really from one to that to, hey, we also want to get a AR for home defense, to, I mean, literally everybody. Hey, is body armor allowed? Are we allowed to get, plate carriers? Are we allowed to get bulletproof vests? I mean, really, it's been such a wide spectrum of people being interested in getting into shooting, getting into, I guess, the self-defensive, concealed carry mindset. And it's on a level that I've never seen before. I mean, I've been putting my 2-year-old to bed for the last, 8 months every single night. I don't miss it. I love it. It's when I cuddle up with him in bed. We roughhouse, we have fun. What you're not supposed to do before putting a baby to bed, but to me and my 2-year-old son. So I absolutely love it, but I haven't put him to bed in the last week and a half. I miss it. I'm out at the range. I've been training people nearly every single night after they get off of work, helping them. Hey, here is a slew of different handguns, some of the most popular ones on the market. Are you looking for home defense? Are you looking for concealed carry? Are you looking for both? I did a 2-hour event last night with my friend Bree Warner, who goes by Tactigal on social media. We did a 2-hour event just talking to Jews about, difference in full metal jacket versus hollow point, outside the waistband, inside the waistband, the difference between revolvers, shotguns, handguns, rifle, just like kind of like a real big breakdown. So to educate them, what's AR stand for? More than half the room is like, oh, it's an assault rifle. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not. Automatic rifle, yeah, no, it's not. So, just kind of educating them so that they can make informed decisions on what works best for them. So it's been wild.
Yeah. So why don't you walk us through real quick some of the things you've been doing over these last 10, 12 days? What's your schedule look like? What's your day to day been like?
And it basically is, I'm either on the phone discussing gun rights with podcasters and coming on shows and being interviewed, planning my own programs. I did a Zoom call with over 45 people in attendance last week, members of my community. I did this other event last night that was a 2-hour event talking to them. Also, it was more in person. trying to get them to, sign up to the range and start frequenting them, to just meeting people at the gun range saying, hey, here is different types of guns that are out there. You need to, just educating them on that, taking them to the range and teaching them how to kind of like the basics. I'm not like a fantastic instructor, but I specialize in being able, like new shooters for the first time, never picking up a gun, just getting, hey, here's a proper grip, here's a proper stance, get the, you have the creep, get the trigger to the wall, then squeeze, stuff, very the basics. And if they enjoy it, I took a couple shooting last Thursday night, and the husband was shooting and he was doing a pretty good job. And I turned around and the wife is standing there, I mean, visibly shaking. Like she was from head to toe. You can see her whole body just shaking. And I turned to her husband, I'm like, all right, put the gun down. And I turned to the wife, I'm like, hey, your turn. And she's like, wait, what? I said, nope, let's go up to the range, up to the line. And, I put one round in. I think she was shooting the SIG XL and the 365 XL. And I put one round in, and, I help her with her stance. I help her with her grip. And, breathe. You're good to go. Nothing bad is going to happen. You'll be fine. She got one shot off and she puts the gun down, and you can I said, no, take a deep breath. And you just see like that huge deep breath, and you see like her whole body convulse because like, that energy just releases. It's like that shiver down your spine. I'm like, how was it? She goes, not as bad as I thought I was. I'm like, great, go shoot another 5 rounds. And, before she knew it, she put like 80, 90 rounds down range. And she's like, okay, I want to do this more often. I want to get this gun. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. I had another guy come up to me, said, yeah, I was talking to this ex-Mossad guy. And he said, the gun I have to get is a Smith & Wesson. I'm like, first off, don't listen to Mossad guy. He might be smart. He might be a James Bond, but he's an idiot when it comes to self-defense. And he's like, how can you say that? I'm like, because he's telling you exactly what gun you should get. And yeah. I take this guy to the range, and I put my Glock 43X on the line. I put a Glock 19, 2 SIGs, and the exact model Smith that this Mossad guy told this guy to get. And this guy shot the Smith. He's like, yeah, no, don't like it. Don't like it. I'm like, there you go. And he also, he decided to go with the X macro. So, which is a great gun. And and so that's what I've been doing. I've kind of been, popping people's bubbles, saying like, don't listen to anyone else. If anyone's telling you this is the gun you should get, don't listen to any other advice they're giving you, because they're telling you what works for them, not what works for you. So that's been a lot of the big educational process right there.
And so, through all of this, what are you seeing from, organized gun rights groups? Are you getting support from them or the industry? And then also from Jewish groups, what are the reactions that you've seen from them? So
interestingly, none of the big groups have really reached out to me. I'm sure if I reached out to them, especially like Gun Owners of America, I'm sure if I reached out to Eric Pratt, he would, throw his support behind me. I have no doubts. But what I have seen, there's one guy named Patrick Collins out in Atlanta. He has a website called The Gun Food. He's a wholesaler. He sent me 1,000 rounds that I can help train people. Phoenix Ammunition is sending me a bunch of ammo that I can help train people. So there are definitely groups out there who are backing me. The local range that I use is called, and I'm going to definitely give them a shout out for anyone in Texas here, called Mr. Guns in Plano. They have absolutely opened up their doors to the Jewish community. If I take them shooting, if I come in with a client to train them, they actually have a deal in their system called the Pew Pew Jew deal that is, it pays for the lane fee unlimited handgun rentals and 100 rounds for $50, which is a great price. So they've opened their doors to me and helping me and allowing me to bring people there to train and not charging me to use a lane. So they are, firmly believe that Jews need to be armed, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. So there's another range near my house that is trying to work on something that I can bring people there as well. It's a little closer, but they're more of a corporate range, and they have to cut through the red tape in order to get anything done. But Jewish organizations have been reaching out to me. I've been approached by a bunch of people where they can get training, and I'll send them to different trainers that I know, not necessarily Jewish trainers, in Colorado, or I have one of my close buddies who I know. I don't know if you ended up talking to my buddy Yossi Elefort from Magen Am, who does unbelievable work. So if I have organizations in the West Coast area, I'm like, talk to this guy. So I've then I have another buddy, the tactical rabbi on the East Coast. So I've just been, kind of wheeling and dealing and just getting people connected with gun industry folks who, like I said, you've seen me grow from an obscure nobody with my first book to now actually being a real brand and having a good reputation in the industry. And I'm now utilizing all of that networking I've done for the last 7 years to help Jews arm themselves and learn and train and get educated.
Yeah. And I did talk to Yossi, and they've been just as busy as what you're describing here. So it's definitely not an isolated thing. Seems to be a nationwide event. And in fact, that makes me wonder what you see happening here long-term for the Jewish community, which has traditionally, as a whole, at least according to polling, been less open to gun ownership and more open to gun restrictions.
Right.
And so what do you see that changing in the larger community? So
Jews have a uncanny ability of deciding something, and again, it is what it is. Facts, as Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings. But what I've seen in the past is an attack will happen. There will be an incredible amount of interest to pick up a firearm, learn to use it, train, get educated, and again possibly carry. And then within a week, things begin to die down, and so does that urge to pick up a gun. In this case, I have yet to see it die down. There is still a big interest. Now, if the war in Israel begins to die down, and let's say you see the protests die down, I have no doubts that there will be a massive downturn in people interested. But who knows, right? Like, again, I'm 39. This is an unprecedented time in my lifetime. I have never seen anything like this. And I hope that that it doesn't slow down. I hope people finally realize that, hey, this keeps on happening. We were completely caught off guard. I mean, look, Israel was caught off guard. And even as American Jews, we were caught off guard. I mean, I know I wasn't. I've been preparing forever. But when I say just in general, American Jews have been caught off guard. And I really hope that there's no, that it doesn't slow down with people saying, hey, it's slowed down in Israel. We don't see as many protests now. So, maybe we don't need it really. I hope they're like, no, we saw what happened. It's important that we begin to train so that we aren't caught off guard in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, look, I really appreciate you coming on the show to give us that on the ground perspective. From somebody who's there doing training day in and day out right now and is connected to the community. So if people want to hear more from you, if they want to maybe read one of your books or follow what you're doing, how can they do that?
So the best way to reach me or follow me is just across social media. It's very simple. It's the Pew Pew Jew, PEW. and then Jew. So the Pew Pew Jew. And then thepewpewjew.com is where people can get my books. If you think my John Hancock is worth all of $8, you can get signed copies off my website. If not, you can go get them for a few dollars cheaper on Amazon. But yeah, my website or social media is the best way to find out more about me. Follow me, follow my shenanigans, and liking to stir the pot. All that stuff is on social media.
Is that what's the best way for somebody who maybe a Jewish person who's interested in training now or buying their first gun and they want your advice on that? How could they?
Yeah, so they can either go to my website and send me an email through my website, or it's as simple as thepewpewjew@gmail.com.
All right, wonderful. Well, hey, look, we appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to have you on again in the future because
absolutely.
I'm glad we were able to have you on, but it's the first time, and I'd like to do it again down the road too.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I'm always around.
All right, wonderful. We're going to head over to our news update now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the weekly news update. I'm contributing writer Jake Fogleman, joined as always by Reload founder Stephen Gutowski. How are we doing this week, Steve?
I'm a little tired. I was up until 3 last night, 3:30, finishing the newsletter, writing our big piece on American Jewish community and how it's arming itself after those Hamas attacks. Some of the things we just talked about with Yehuda on the main interview. So sometimes that's what happens when you run a small publication. You have to get the news done, and so sometimes you just have to be tired. But I think the piece turned out well. 2 pieces. We have a members piece as well that talks about the desire by many of these folks to not just buy a gun, but buy a gun they think is going to be capable enough to stop what they saw in Israel. And for a lot of them, that's been AR-15s. And we'll get to a little bit more of that in a bit here. But also not a great day yesterday. We're filming on Friday because the Phillies managed to lose in Arizona in front of like a half-empty stadium. But I think they'll be fine. I think they'll bounce back today, hopefully. So I don't need to have a heart attack watching them play a team they should have swept. You know what I mean? But it's the NLCS, so not that easy. Not that easy to sweep.
And they've been on a good run. They're looking good other than that. So
yeah, I think, unless the entire lineup goes cold for the next 3 games, which, in sports, it could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it's likely, though. But we'll see. I mean, the Eagles lost their first game last week, and then they're playing the Dolphins this week. So that's not looking.
It's a tough game. Yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not like, this will be an easy bounce back game. But so sports life at this exact moment is not great. A couple days ago, I was at game 2, and that was amazing.
There you go.
Still pretty high off of that. That was fantastic. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm good. You talk about sports life, and it's pretty much just been straight depression here in Denver with our pitiful football teams. So I can commiserate.
We don't need to put ourselves on the same level.
You're right. That's a leap for me.
But I get where you're coming from. Have you been able to go to the range or anything like that recently?
Yeah, I see. Last weekend, I was actually out of town at a wedding, so through the weekend, so I wasn't able to go to the range. But I'm hoping possibly this weekend, now that I'm finally back, I don't have any big plans this weekend, so maybe I can actually take some time and go shoot, because it has been too long, almost 2 months now since I've gone to the range, which usually I don't go that long between range trips. So
that was the other thing I did recently. Last weekend was I did our charity range day, the Homes for Our Troops charity auction, the celebrity auction that somehow I qualify for. We actually, it was the person who won 2 years ago, who just finally been able to put together a time to meet up. He brought his family, his daughters. It was a really good time. We shot some steel with Merrill Walters, who's the friend of the family who hosts for us. He's a Reload member as well, and he, he's got this nice little range on his farm with steel targets. Got a Texas Star. It's a lot of fun. So that was a good time. I'm also going this weekend to the range. I will say that these red dots, the batteries just keep dying. Maybe it's a battery. Maybe I need to find other batteries that are better. But yeah, I keep having issues with the batteries. I definitely need to get rid of the SIG red dot, the Romeo Zero Elite that came on my X Macro. I just can't trust that thing as far as I can throw it at this point. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. SIG has a new upgraded micro dot that's supposed to be great, but I don't know if I trust them with anything now.
I'd say it's tough now.
I'll probably go to a Hollow Sun or something of that nature, but I need to do it sooner than later because I want to get back to carrying that gun. It shoots great and it's got 17 round capacity, so it's a nice gun. And I also I'm trying out another new holster. I think it's the Black Arch, I believe is the name of it, the company that makes it, and it's the one hybrid-ish holster. It's like a 3/4 hybrid holster that John Correa and the Active Self-Protection folks recommend. So, because it has the plastic, the Kydex guard goes completely around the trigger guard of the firearm instead of only being half on one side. So, it's a little bit more secure, I guess, is the idea, and it's very comfortable though. So, the Enigma is great for appendix. And I think this gun will be, or this holster will be really good for strong side carry, which I've traditionally done, as we've talked about before on the show. So I still need to, basically I need to get my act together and replace the red dot so that I can start carrying that gun more consistently. But it's, it's something that, the other red dot that I have, from SIG, the Romeo 1, I think it is, for my P320X5, my old school one. That battery died too. And all it does is sit off all day. And, it's a range gun. I don't carry it around. So how the battery died that fast again, I don't know. This is one of those things. And maybe, I feel like it hasn't been in there that long. I haven't been on that gun for that long. Maybe it's got to be less than a year for sure. And if it's not on, I don't understand why the battery would die, for quickly, a long time. So these SIG guns, the guns are fantastic. The optics, I'm not as impressed by. But well, what can you do? You got to buy another expensive optic.
More money.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to the range this weekend with a friend. So looking forward to that on Sunday. The Eagles don't play till 8, so I got time for range time.
Very nice.
And the Phillies, I don't know. I think they would play Saturday, if not Sunday. So I'll have to see though, because I'll have to schedule around that. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to getting some more trigger time in. Try to see, maybe I'll shoot something, that 1911 that I shaved down the thumb safety on, because I've had that gun for years, right? And it's always dug into my the webbing on my thumb whenever I shoot it, and eventually, it's just unpleasant feeling after a little while. And I finally did something about that. I finally shaped down the safety, the rear of the, not the internal part of the safety, not the part that actually engages with the sears to make sure it doesn't fire. I'm not touching any of that. But the outside of it, where it meets up with the frame of the gun, I just shaved that down a little bit with a Dremel, and it's way better. It's so much better. I should have done it years ago. And that's the thing with these like mass-produced 1911s or really any gun that needs to be particularly fitted like a 1911 does, you know, you might have to do a little bit of work to it, or have somebody, if it's the internal parts, you know, sear on your trigger or something, have a professional do that stuff. Don't touch it yourself. That's my point of view, at least.
Good advice.
And, yeah, because you mess with the sears on the trigger. I mean, it's one thing to just drop in a factory made trigger from a third party or what, you know, an upgraded trigger. That's you know, they're making it to a spec. It's another thing to go in there and file down sears and crap like that yourself. That's when you can start getting into trouble, unless you really know what you're doing. And I don't. So I don't mind messing with the outside of the gun to some degree, but I'm not going to be messing with key critical internal components. But, you know, I should have done this little modification years ago. I do think I need new magazines for it, though, because the slide stop issue did not get fixed by just replacing the slide stop itself. So I think I'm guessing it's the springs on the magazine are too weak at this point. I don't know. That's my best guess for that. So I'll have to grab some more 1911 mags. But I'm looking forward to it. I always enjoy a good range day with a friend. So
absolutely.
What do we got in terms of headlines this week, though?
Yeah, so some of the newsletter links, we got one from Gizmodo talking about a new New York State bill that would potentially introduce background check requirements for any 3D printer that could, and this is from the bill's terms, could potentially be used to make a gun. So it's sort of nebulous what that means, and the whole
that would be every 3D printer.
Yeah, the whole workability of doing a background check for 3D printers is also a little nebulous, but that they're trying it, and it's another attempt to try to crack down on ghost guns. So
this is where some of the gun control mentality goes off the rails with these sorts of things. Like, you know, you can build a submachine gun from parts of the hardware store if you wanted to. These guns are not complicated in the way that they work oftentimes. Now, you know, to get a reliable, safe firearm, you need more than some tubing from the hardware store. But to get a slam fire shotgun, you don't. You need a nail and some metal tubing, and that's your whole, like. And then the idea that you could regulate 3D printed guns, that 3D by going after the printers, all printers, just doesn't seem remotely workable in a free society, at least, and really in a police state either. But at least they would have more of a fighting chance at regulating everything everybody does all the time. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What are they? 3D printers are basically just advanced glue guns, right? There's a heating element you put some plastic through, and it's on a computerized gimbal that moves around the heating element, and that's your 3D printer. That's the whole thing. So are you going to start regulating raw plastics too? I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's kind of funny, to be honest with you.
Beyond the New York bill, we have a report from crime analyst and former guest of the Reload podcast, Jeff Asher.
Probably future guest too.
Especially after this news, because the FBI just released their latest National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS, their 2022 data. And Jeff has a great write-up about how it looks like murder declined 6% last year in 2022, which he says would be in the top 10 for single-year murder rate declines in the U.S., which is pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. And it's especially interesting because as we talked about on the show before, there's been an issue with the FBI. They brilliantly decided to switch over their reporting systems in the middle of a unprecedented murder spike in the United States.
Right.
And so in 2021, you had very few, relative to previous years, agencies actually reporting their data. So their numbers were all screwed up. They apparently had better compliance in 2022. but still saw a 6% drop in the murder rate, which is interesting because you'd think more agencies reporting would have an effect on more murders being reported. But instead we saw a significant decline. And it is, and additionally, as Jeff talked about on the podcast when he was here, there's good reason to think that that's going to continue this year in 2023, and that it's actually probably accelerated this year. And we may end up having the largest decline in murder rate in American history, or at least, since they've been taking these sorts of records. And, that would be really fascinating and obviously really good news, because, the murder rate had declined significantly through the end of the 1990s from levels that really are not well understood by people today who, weren't around living through, I guess, the 70s and 80s and early 90s crime spikes that they, people then experienced. The murder rates were much higher back then. And they stayed historically low for 20 years, right? 25 years. And then 2020 happened and they climbed dramatically, right? And the question was, what is this going to be? Is this just a spike, a temporary spike, and things are going to go back down to where they had been? Or is this the new normal, right, for violence in America? And it's certainly, thankfully, looking like it's going to be the former, that this was a temporary, though awful, increase. And now we're going back to the levels we had previously. See, now I think that even with these declines, you're still going to have an elevated level compared to, the 2000s, the 2010s. And that also the increase in murder really started a little bit before the pandemic. It was just kind of turbocharged at that point. So it's not as though things are necessarily going to be perfect, or, that they're going to go back to how they were exactly in 2007 or something. But it is really good. It's a really good trend,
Yep.
For sure.
And he points out in the piece that it's based on cities that have actually reported so far. 2023 is on pace for a 12% decline if the trend holds. So, which to your point looks like it's accelerating, which is good news.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the final link we're going to talk about, which will also take us into a little bit of a discussion of your reporting. There's a great write-up in the Wall Street Journal about a particular incident in a specific kibbutz near Gaza in Israel during, obviously, the horrific attack by Hamas terrorists, where about 12, they say about a dozen residents of this particular kibbutz were part of sort of a volunteer security force. And as the Hamas attackers were going from, house to house, they took up arms and made a stand and successfully repelled this attack. So it's a pretty remarkable story that there was no fatalities in terms of the residents of the kibbutz. No one was kidnapped from this particular kibbutz. So just pretty remarkable story of essentially what are Israeli Minutemen, just residents that took up arms and defended their neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Minutemen is a good comparison there because these were, the security apparatus for these communities, right? It sounds like most of them had some sort of security team like this in place. Not all of them were able to activate those folks or win their fight. This one was lucky in a sense that instead of hundreds of attackers, they had dozens, according to the Wall Street Journal, which is still, you're still wildly outnumbered in that fight. And they did an incredible job of holding them off. But yeah, they're kind of designated to be community security in this more, it seems like a little bit more remote area of Israel where, you're a little bit on your own to some degree out there in these communities. But this is something we're starting to hear more of these kinds of stories coming out about resistance during these attacks. Most people were defenseless more or less, most of the civilians who were killed, as you could tell in the pictures and videos that we've all seen at this point. But there were people who were able to successfully defend themselves in their communities. And that's not the only story, right? This is the most recent one from the Wall Street Journal. Great reporting on their part. But we've also seen reporting from the Times of Israel about another kibbutz where the security team was able to fend off attackers as well. It was coordinated by a 25-year-old woman named, I think it was Imra Lieberman, sorry. And she was able to rally her defensive team in the same way, get their firearms and defend their neighborhood as well, and didn't have any losses. No one was killed or kidnapped from that neighborhood either. So, and that's actually inspired some of the people here. You know, we wrote this week about American Jews who've decided to arm themselves for the first time in the wake of these attacks, and these stories are inspiring them to do that. You know, the stories of resistance and successful defense of these communities are part of the reason that people are saying they're getting armed. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
I would say it's just to see like you said, Jewish Americans that you spoke to in your reporting, specifically referring to these events as inspiration, as motivation to, you know, potentially arm themselves in case, you know, the worst should happen on American soil as well. So that is interesting.
Yeah, Inbar Lieberman, sorry. And her name came up several times in my interviews with these American Jewish folks who are buying firearms, or they're upgrading their arsenal to try and contend with something like this if it were to happen in the United States. And so these sorts of stories of resistance have become already kind of inspirations over here.
And it's speaking of upgrading their arsenals, a lot of them that you spoke to talked about wanting to get AR-15s in particular in the members piece you wrote. And we have a pretty big development on the legal front over AR-15s because Judge Roger Benitez out of the U.S. District Court in California just officially ruled California's assault weapon ban unconstitutional this week. This is the second time that he's struck down their ban. The first time was before the Supreme Court's Bruin decision, but now this case was sent back to him because of the Bruin decision, and he ruled
this was one of the cases the Supreme Court granted, vacated, and remanded, right? And then the Ninth Circuit, instead of deciding it themselves as it was sent back to them, they decided to send it all the way back down to the district judge who wrote the original ruling, and frankly, what sure seems like a bit of strategic litigating, you know, a delay tactic, essentially.
Right.
You know, because Benitez's first ruling on this is very similar to this ruling as well. And it's exactly what people expected he was going to write. And there really wasn't any practical need. Look, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know what's in the minds of the judges at the Ninth Circuit, but it's very clearly been a very a circuit that's very hostile to rulings against any kind of gun law, really. They often take these cases en banc, even though going en banc is a very rare phenomenon generally. Basically, all of the pro-gun rulings that have come out of the Ninth Circuit have gone en banc and been overturned at that point. And this is another way that justices who don't like the Bruin decision or the Heller decision that expanded the court's understanding of Second Amendment protections, this is another way for them to sort of resist that in a sense, by making everything take as long as possible to get through. And you've seen this in a number of cases. We haven't had a circuit court level ruling on an assault weapons ban since Bruin, even though the court sent 2 of them back down and is clearly interested in this topic. Because the Fourth Circuit is also relitigate. They didn't do this. They didn't send it all the way back down to the district judge, but they did. They are just kind of sitting after arguments. I think it's one of the longest.
It's been 10 months
delayed. Yeah. Decisions that we've seen. So that's first point there. Like, this is the reason that Benitez is even ruling on this again is because I think the majority on the Ninth Circuit don't want the inevitable to happen, which is that they'll have to decide this case and risk being appealed to the Supreme Court and losing.
Right.
So, that's an interesting sort of flavor to this. These are one of those stories where it's like, this is a big ruling, but within the context, it also is, it's mainly the practical outcome of it, the main practical outcome, because Benitez did issue a 10-day stay pending appeal. We all expect that the DOJ will appeal this decision and that the Ninth Circuit will take this case probably en banc if they have to, depending on what probably the appeals panel does. But because last time the appeals panel agreed with Benitez, if I remember correctly. So, if that happens again, then the court would probably take it en banc and then overturn Benitez and uphold the law would be my guess. We'll have to see. We don't know. It's for sure, but that's what happened last time. And I don't see any indication that the Ninth Circuit judges who upheld the law previously have changed their mind in any way. But it's so in a sense, like, there's not a lot of practical effect of this ruling beyond moving it further along. But that's what gun rights advocates need to do if they want to win this case. They got to move it. It has to move. And so it just did move. And now we wait and see what the Supreme Court does, if anything, with this, because who knows?
Right. And that's, to your point, that is the big deal about this, because one, it's one of the first, if not the first, I think it's one of the first at least, to actually reach merits on an assault weapons ban case. We've seen a ton of, obviously, preliminary injunction opinions after Bruin, but this is the first to actually do a final, this is unconstitutional on the merits. And so you have this going up, as you said, back up to the Ninth Circuit on the West Coast. We have obviously the Fourth Circuit decision that, who knows when that's going to happen. We have a Seventh Circuit case awaiting review on Illinois' ban. Yep. And so this is exactly the situation, to your point, that gun rights advocates would need if they want eventual Supreme Court review on this very question, is all the various circuit splits, however they may rule, actually issuing opinions on this, which we haven't had to this point after Bruin, which could very well lead to eventual Supreme Court oversight. So,
and this is where all the energy was in the gun rights movement after Bruin. This is what people expected the fallout to be of Bruin, is that assault weapons bans, magazine limits, handgun rosters, things like that were going to be done away with. And mostly what we've seen the courts make news on to this point. You have seen some of those, right? You've seen preliminary injunctions, but you've mostly seen courts go both ways on those questions at the lower levels, right? They're sort of working out the two competing methods for applying Bruin, one that strikes down laws and one that upholds them, basically. But and the court's going to have to decide one way or the other on those things. Eventually, it sure seems like, despite the harsh tone it took with lower courts over how they treated Heller, it does not appear to be a big sea change in how they're treating Bruin, where you're basically getting courts who think it will allow you to uphold most any law. And that's not across the board. You've seen some judges appointed by Biden or Obama rule against certain gun restrictions because of the Bruin standards. But in a lot of the high profile cases, you've seen what you saw before, which is Republican appointed judges strike down gun restrictions while Democrat appointed ones uphold them. Like I said, there's some variation there. It's not completely black and white, but but it's not that far off from what we were seeing before Bruin happened either. So, yeah, I mean, it's, and so the court's going to have to decide this, but a lot of these sort of big ticket cases about all the most controversial gun policies in the country, assault weapons bans and magazine limits and things of that nature, they've kind of taken a backseat to a lot of these criminal cases where the argument is over who can be restricted from owning guns and what kind of restrictions, who can gun restrictions apply to, what kinds of people, whether you've been convicted of a nonviolent felony, or if you used marijuana or something like that, and what kind of restrictions can be applied to those people. Can you have a lifetime ban, for instance? Can you have a ban after minimal due process on, a temporary ban on owning guns? Those are the sorts of things that have actually gotten the most traction in courts and moved the furthest. And, the court is taking them up right now with the domestic violence restraining order case. But, that's just the nature of landmark rulings. Everyone comes in with the context of this ruling happened because the gun rights group pushed for it. And the movement generally pushed for these rulings over the years, but that ruling is going to have all kinds of effects that you don't necessarily foresee because it applies to anyone caught up in the federal court systems and really the state court systems as well. So that's why a lot of these cases that are moving faster than the assault weapons ban cases are public defenders, right? Just asserting Bruin as a defense in a lot of these cases and oftentimes winning, So it's been interesting. But to bring it back to the main story, I was a lot of those people who told me they don't just want guns, that they want guns that they think are capable of helping them repel an attack like what they saw in Israel. They wanted ARs and they were in California. I think 3 of the people I spoke with were in California, and they all brought up AR-15s. And one of the trainers that I spoke with, he talked about how multiple people have called him about buying an AR-15 in California since then. So nothing has changed for them practically at this point, but I do think it speaks to the importance of this sort of case and how many people are watching it closely, especially in the Jewish community right now.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So, but that's all we've got for this week. If you like what we're doing here at The Reload, you can head over to the reload.com and pick up a membership today. It will get you exclusive access to the member piece we just discussed, as well as hundreds of others pieces of analysis and reporting that you won't find anywhere else. You also get this podcast a day early and the opportunity to appear on the show in a member segment. And what buying those memberships does is support our reporting. That's how we fund The Reload is directly through membership. So we're not owned by some sort of large conglomerate. We don't have big money backers or whatever. We are beholden to our members. They're the people who fund us and the people that we report for. So if you want to become one, head over to thereload.com today. We would greatly support that. If you are not ready to make that sort of purchase, you can also help us out by liking and sharing this podcast with your friends, anyone you think you'd be interested, and giving us a positive rating on whatever podcast app you're listening on. Those things all help us. So please do them. Anyway, we will be back again real soon.